Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon. Or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode.
Hello, this is the voice of God. For all of you non-believers out there who keep wondering about an afterlife, well, I have a simple solution. Go to Amazon Prime and watch the Afraid of Nothing documentary. You'll have your answer. And please do leave a positive review. Those who don't, well, you'll be damned. And for those of you who say you don't know how to leave a review on Amazon Prime, for God's sake, grow up! You learned how to walk, you learned how to talk, you learned how to listen to a podcast. You can leave a review on Amazon Prime. All right, enough preaching, even from God. Now, on to our show.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
All right, we have with us a familiar face to me and to those who have seen the Afraid of Nothing documentary. His name is Cuyle Carvin. He was in a segment where we went to Salem and did a witch tour of Salem. We talked to a past life regressionist, and then we talked to a witch. And there's some interesting insights from that. Before I go into it, if you didn't watch Afraid of Nothing, Cuyle has over 100 credits on his IMDb page. And this is some of the shows he's been on. NCIS, NCIS Los Angeles, NCIS New Orleans, The Walking Dead, MacGyver, American Made with Tom Cruise, Modern Family, Grimm, Criminal Minds, The Mentalist, Days of Our Lives, Law and Order, As the World Turns, Rescue Me, and of course, The Assault of Sasquatch. Welcome, Cuyle Carvin.
The plug for the Sasquatch is perfect. I love that.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I assume that's one of your indie projects, because you're a guy that does TV, major films, and also indie as well. Was that an indie project that you worked on?
That was like, it's basically an indie. It was, that was so long ago. But that was like one of my favorites. That was like one of the first horror movies that I was able to get into, and I was so stoked. And it was the first time that I got to work with this particular production company, which I was trying to for so many years. And so it was just, that project is like a special little place in my heart, Sasquatch.
That's awesome. It leaped out at me. One question I have for you as an actor, we'll go over some actor questions first, and then we'll get into the paranormal stuff. But which is more intimidating, doing an audition Or walking onto the set of like The Walking Dead and being with the live actors for your first day on the set?
Well, it's over the years that answer has definitely changed. Walking onto sets is, or I should say, was pretty scary. Like there's still a little bit of nerves going into it because you don't know who you're basically going to be working with in a way, especially when I'm not the star of a show or anything. So I'm basically walking into other people's shows, and you never know what kind of egos you have to deal with or personalities. Thankfully, the majority of people that I've worked with have all been really cool. So, and same with auditions. They can be, depending on the project, sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's not. But that's all, it's self pressure. And it's like a little story that the Tom Cruise movie that I did, American Made. If I was a lazy actor, is what I should say. For that one, I didn't even look up the movie that I was auditioning for, which is like kind of a big no-no for some actors. They're like, how can you not research what you're auditioning for? But I got in this mindset of like, when I started looking up to seeing who was on the project, then my nerves would start because I'd want to be on that project, obviously, for a chance to work with Tom Cruise. So I didn't even look it up. And even when I booked it, I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know I was working with Tom Cruise until the day that I arrived on the set. So then obviously I start to get a little nervous because I just have no idea what to expect. But thankfully I'm like an old cranky actor now. So it's like the audition process and, going on to something new. It's not really nerves anymore. It's more just excitement than anything else. Yeah.
So how did the Tom Cruise scene go? You're in a cockpit with him, right? So how was that? Did that go pretty normal? Did you have extra takes or was it pretty smooth?
No, it was actually really smooth. The process was pretty simple. We were in and out in, I want to say, 3 to 4 hours. We just had this one scene. And I was actually really impressed with Tom because so the scene is basically we're doing a pre-flight checklist. And for the audition, I have this 5 or 6 things that I'm going down this checklist. And Tom Cruise's his responses are check, yep, ready to go. Simple responses to simple things like windows, landing gear. Yeah, it's up. So it was relatively simple. But then on the day we're filming, the director, Doug Lyman, he's like, let's just lose the script. Let's go with the actual checklist, which I conveniently had right in front of me in the cockpit. So I basically literally read the actual list. Meanwhile, Tom Cruise, he has to learn on the spot the correct responses to each of these. And it's not, yes, ready to go. It's like some of them were kind of complicated. So he had to like literally learn these responses. And he did it in like 5 to 10 minutes. And I was impressed with how quick he did that. But I guess, that's why he's Tom Cruise, I guess. So
well, he's a pilot too, right? He flies. Is he a pilot as well?
I'm not sure. He might be. That would make sense.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
So there you go. Now, for trivia fans of The Walking Dead, you want to tell them your little kind of record that you hold on The Walking Dead?
Oh, yeah. Well, Walking Dead is like the highlight of my career, personally, like my personal goals. So I have the dubious record of the most kills by a non-main character. And I think it's 34. This little record that I even know about, but, the fans of the show, they keep track of that stuff. So...
So how many shows did it take for you to kill? Was it 1 or how many episodes were you on?
Well, you see me in 1. I'm credited for 2 episodes. So I'm not over the course of basically the ending of 1 episode and then the beginning of another. And I'm basically, I don't know, I'm not too familiar with guns, but it's just one of those that's sitting on a turret and it's huge gun and it's just like spraying bullets everywhere. So it didn't take long, like less than 5 minutes.
Sounds like a great part.
Yeah.
Now, you also, just stay in the horror for a little bit, it was about a year or so ago, you directed your own horror film, and you want to tell us about that and the cast in that?
Sure. That was at the end of 2018, I believe. It was a film called Dolls, which a lot of people think it has to do with Stewart. I'm forgetting the full name of the original back from like the 80s or the late 70s. There's a film called Dolls. This is not like a remake. It didn't have anything to do with it. And it was actually, when we filmed it, it was called Attic Dolls. It's just one of the distributors' name title changes. But anyway, yeah, that was the first feature I got to direct. Shot that out in LA. And we had Dee Wallace, which, a lot of people know her. She's famous from being in E.T. and the mom on E.T. and multiple other projects. So she was like the big name in the film. But that was an awesome experience to get to do horror, because that's like one of the driving reasons why I got into the business, was to make horror films.
Did you have a cameo in that? I'm trying to remember.
I did. I didn't show my face. I just didn't want to necessarily be like, oh, that's the director's cameo, if anybody knew me.
Yeah.
So I kind of didn't want that distraction. I don't know if it would have been a distraction, but
your voice then?
Anyway.
I'm trying to remember. What was it? Your voice, or what did we?
It's I walk into a room, but I kind of framed it so you don't see who's walking into the room. So
okay.
It's basically my neck down. Yeah. The good parts.
There you go. By the way, that was Stuart Gordon was the director on Dolls from
Stuart Gordon.
Cool. How long did that take from, well, first, how did you get the opportunity, and how long did it take from start to get it in the can? Because I thought it was kind of quick, wasn't it? Or compared to most films?
Yeah, it was really quick. So over the past 3 or 4 years prior to that, I was working with my friend, Robert Michael Ryan, and we were doing these short films, like 3-minute films, kind of like an anthology series. And we just did super sweet, short little horror films, and we put them up on YouTube. And then a mutual friend of ours, who's a producer out in LA, and he mostly does horror films. Sometimes he does action films. His name is Jeff Miller. And he's like on the business end of things. And he saw some of our films, and he thought that one of them matched the tone of a film that he was getting ready to produce. So he asked us to get involved. So it took maybe 3 to 4 months from when we first started talking about it to right up until we started filming. We had filmed only 13 days, I think it was what it was.
Oh, that's fast. That is fast.
Yeah, and they wanted it done, for business purposes. It was the following summer. The new Annabelle film was coming out.
Right.
So, they want to take advantage of the Haunted Doll movie coming out and just use the momentum of that kind of free PR. So that's why they wanted to knock out this Dolls film really quick. So from the time we shot it, the first 2 weeks of December, it was finished and delivered, I think on February 8th. So it was a super quick process.
Yeah, it looked good. I mean, it was really good production value. And want to tell people where they can watch it?
Yeah, that's on Amazon Prime. It did end up making it to some shelves, Walmart in particular. I'm not sure where else. I imagine it'll end up at a dollar bin somewhere. But you can watch it on Amazon Prime.
Cool. And what about the short series, where we kind of throw in plugs intermittently? But what about the shorts? Where can they see that if they want to see some of your horror shorts?
So all that stuff is on salemhousefilms.com. And we're going to continue to put up just free stuff up there as well. So you can check out the short films there.
Cool. Now to the juice. You were in the documentary Afraid of Nothing. You came to me from actually a psychic, which sounds kind of mystical in itself. Right. But Ruthie Larkin, the Beantown medium, mentioned you, and we connected, and you came out, and we did. So look, Afraid of Nothing is kind of like an anthology of different people and personalities, and a kind of different perspectives and lens on the supernatural and spirituality and the afterlife. And then we try to stitch it together to hopefully have some kind of common thread at the end. But you were unique in that you were kind of a seeker. You were a person that I'll start it and let you finish it. But basically, you've always had a kind of a weird connection to Salem, Mass. But you didn't grow up in Massachusetts. You grew up in New York, and you've always had a calling to that town. So with that, I'll leave it to you to kind of fill in the rest and how you met Ruthie, and then we'll talk about your day on the set.
I'm from middle of New York State. It's about 3.5 hours northwest of New York City, a small town called Oneonta, New York. And the first time I went to Salem, I was 14, and I went with my mom, she was in my church youth group, and she decided to do a trip with a group of us. We went there, and even when I was 14, I just didn't know what I liked about the town. I couldn't really put anything into words, but there was just something that I just loved about it. And we ended up going back, the same church group. I don't know if it was the following year or it was 2 years later. And basically from those first 2 trips, I just decided I just have to come back to Salem as much as I can. And then when I went 18 and I actually stayed pretty local for college, but I would go to Salem, which it was like a 4 to 4.5 hour drive. And I would go there as much as I could during college. And I never knew what it was. There was something about the town where, what I like to describe it to people is like I don't know if it's true for all people, but I'm a really happy guy. I'm usually always in a really good mood. I'm generally just happy demeanor, but there's always something like inside of me that just feels like, that home of the past that we all kind of leave behind. Like what some people may say, it's like the innocence of childhood, or when we don't have the responsibilities of adulthood and paying bills and all the stuff that weighs us down as we get older. But there's something that's just missing inside of me. And when I'm in Salem, it's this weird feeling that disappears, and I feel like I'm, quote, home. I feel like I'm in a place where I could just sit in the town and be perfectly happy, not doing anything at all. And that feeling every time I'm there, it continues. So I never knew that there was more to why I felt that way until, I don't remember the year, but one of my friends in Boston, his name's Fred Grandinetti, and he got me a reading with Ruthie, Beantown Medium, for Christmas one year. And we ended up chatted with Ruthie, and she brought up the fact that she said I had a past life dating, back to the Salem witch trials, and that I had a connection. And she said some pretty specific things, that I was a character that was, I was a person that was actually murdered during the witch trials for trying, I think it was, I said I was trying to protect somebody, or I was trying to defend innocent people or something like that. And I ended up getting murdered. I don't know if it was directly related to what was going on at that time, or if it was unrelated. And then after talking with Ruthie about that, and I had another reading with another psychic, and they mentioned that they feel like I have some sort of past life connection to Salem as well. So it's come up a couple times now.
Now, did you do psychic readings before Fred set you up with that one, or was that your first time? And then it's like, wow, this is kind of interesting.
No, I actually had done them 2 or 3 times in the past, but it was more of I didn't really like, for example, I think one of the first 2 trips that I took to Salem with the youth group, I remember having one in Salem, and I don't remember anything about it. I do remember they said my current girlfriend I would not be with, and that came true. But I don't remember my other readings. But Ruthie's was the first time that I really started taking things seriously, and that really stemmed from, she asked me if I wanted to contact anybody in particular, and I had just lost my stepfather not long before we had talked, and she brought up some details about him that really made me think that there's something really mysterious with her and her connection to me and knowing what's going on.
Yeah, she's in the film too, and she'll be on the show hopefully in the somewhat near future. She usually doesn't do shows, but she has an affinity for us. Thank God. But she's well regarded. She's really well regarded as a medium. She's particularly known for grieving parents who have lost children. She does a lot of work helping them, and I've been to actually a couple. I was at least once. I was at a full day training session, and yeah, I've seen her live, and she's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. She couldn't be there on the day that we were filming, but the day we filmed, we did 3 things. And I'm just going to kind of set it up and ask you to kind of talk about your perspective on it. And the last one was kind of interesting because it was with a witch, and she actually picked up some stuff that added on to what Ruthie said. But we'll start with, first of all, was Dr. Vitka, which was actually the last guest I just finished editing and posted yesterday. And he has an insight into Salem that it was even deeper than I thought.
Oh, wow.
But he took us on a tour, right? And about the witch tours. And why don't you just talk about anything that kind of popped out from your time on that witch tour that we went to different sites in Salem?
Yeah, that was a cool experience. I had done, multiple tours of the city over the years. So I had heard a lot of the stories that he mentioned. But hearing what you have to say, I'm gonna have to talk to him again, because I think he's been there for a really long time, and he definitely knows a few things. But yeah, walking around this city when we were doing the documentary, it was kind of like meeting different people in the town, hearing what they do and what they practice, and then just kind of feeling if I felt anything in particular, like emotionally or if I was sensing anything personally. And I didn't notice anything particularly specific while we were doing the documentary. But yeah, it was great to just meet everybody. And everybody had like a unique spin on their experiences of what happens after we die.
Yeah, and what he did is he kind of set up the witch thing. It was him and another person named Tim McGuire, who's a historian as well. And he was kind of talking about, he took us to a couple places like the site of Bridget Bishop's house, which was actually a restaurant, I think, when we were on site there.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, he took us to different places. He took us to a kind of a prison area where they were kept captive, and he gave a ton of background of what it was, and also that it was like very, that if you sided against the accusers, it was very easy for them to accuse you. He gave us kind of the background of Salem at that point. And then we went and met with a woman named Susan Damegreen, who was a past life regressionist. Now, we went to her office, which was like the second floor of the post office, and she couldn't like do a past life regression on you, but you basically sat down and interviewed her and asked her about her process. So I want to tell us a little bit about how that went.
Yeah, that was really, really interesting. I had never met anybody that had done that specific practice before. And what was most interesting to me were actually some of the conversation behind, the cameras weren't rolling, I don't think. There was a conversation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but we were talking about like the process of reincarnation, and I was asking how does that work? And she talked about the different levels. Basically, you come here as your spirit, and you learn different lessons along the way, and then you kind of graduate, if you will. And these are my words, not hers, into like the next level, assuming you've learned what lessons you were here to learn. And I asked her, what happens? Is there an ending? Is there a top? And she said, yes, but only 2 people have ever reached that level. And she said it was Buddha and Jesus. So that was really interesting to hear. And it was actually right in line with, I'm sure anybody that's interested in this, in anything paranormal that really kind of dives into multiple subjects, or I should say, at least for me, because I have broad interest in all sorts of angles of this field. So it's like when I read about like near-death experiences, for example, and then I hear about past life regression therapy, when I hear about reincarnation, there's parts of all of them that kind of overlap. So it's really interesting that they kind of confirm each other in different ways. And that's what really makes, it really solidifies and informs how I really believe in what I believe. Because at a certain point, it just feels like things don't become coincidences after a while, after hearing multiple stories and hearing how things overlap. And one thing I also asked her, I said, this was definitely off camera. And I said, how do you deal with people who try to diminish what you do, who don't really believe and just, cast aside that you have any validity in what you do? And she said, I don't care. My business is not to worry about their opinion of what I do. I'm here to help people that want help. And I always loved it. And I don't know, and it's such a great answer. It's such a common sense answer, but I never really heard it that way. Yeah. And when she said it, that helped me because, and I don't know where this comes from for me. Maybe it's like the acting part of me, but I want everybody to believe what I believe in that way. You know what I mean? I want, because it's like, to me, there's so many things that seem so obvious, but they're just the paranormal research and study. I'm sure it's come leaps and bounds from where it was in terms of being accepted, and it's always growing. But it's like there's just so much consistencies and things that are in common and stories through generations and cultures that to me it's just like there's stuff going on that we're not admitting to, and we're just having a tough time believing. And I've always wanted to just be like, why don't you guys believe? Look at all this stuff. Yeah. And when she said, it's not her job, it's like, don't worry about what other people think about it. You're just here to help other people who want the help and who want to experience. Don't worry about the people. They're never going to. So I just really loved that little anecdote.
Now that kind of wraps her up in a nutshell. Visually, for people that haven't seen the film, she's not this crazy looking maniacal or voodoo or whatever woman. She looks like your aunt or something, She's got her dog with her, and she's just very kind of charming and very not over the top. She's just having a conversation with her is smooth. It's like drinking a glass of water. She's really very easy to be comfortable with her.
Absolutely.
So she really was a good person to talk with.
Hello, listeners. We interrupt this podcast for some shameless self-promotion. Sorry about that.
Hello, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Reading, PA, Chicago, my kind of town, Beverly, Mass, Gardner, Mass, Auburn, Mass, Burlington, Ontario, and Manhattan, my favorite cocktail. In New York, not really. You're the top 10 listening locations. Keep on listening. Our Afraid of Nothing podcast has over 2,300 episodes dropped. Mostly in the U.S., but also in 23 other countries. Thank you, merci beaucoup, gracias, and thank you in a million billion ways. Our documentary is also killing it on Amazon Prime. Sure, we have a few haters out there, but you, our faithful listeners, you're the ones that really matter. So thanks, big thanks, mega thanks. Hey, these are tough times, and we have to keep each other positive and entertained. Okay, last plug. Do check out, as in check out, buying the merch from the Afraid of Nothing online store. That's aonpodcaststore.com. Just because no one can see you aren't wearing pants doesn't mean you can't be wearing a cool t-shirt. Okay, back to the show. And the next person, the last leg of your trip, was with a witch in Salem called Lori Bruno, where we went to her shop called Magica. And she actually did a little bit of a reading on you, and she picked up on some stuff. So I want to have you go first, and then I'll fill in if you don't remember stuff that I kind of recall. But let you go first and how that went.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to shore me up on this one. I remember her. Funny enough, I remember that she was saying she knew that I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and she picked up pretty quickly that I did not really care for my life in Los Angeles, which was cool that she noticed that almost right away.
New York. I see New York. You shouldn't be in LA. I see New York. And you said, yeah, you grew up there. You remember that?
Yeah. That now I do. Yeah. Yeah. And she did mention I had something with the Salem witch trials as well. I don't remember the details off the top of my head though.
I'll throw out something and see how you, she saw, you had a farm. You lived there, she definitely put you there, basically. I don't know if she said you were married or not, but you had a farm, so you're pretty well to do. And she saw a noose, a hangman's noose.
Right.
But it was empty. And she said she wasn't sure, does that mean that you escaped being killed?
Yes.
Or does it carry on with you as you go forward in your life, which could be based on what you're feeling. So, yeah. So I'll pause there and let you add.
Absolutely. Yeah. How could I forget that? Yeah. The noose thing, that was such a stark image that she described too. Yeah. How could I forget that? Yeah. The noose, the empty noose. Yeah. It's pretty interesting to think about what that could mean. Just, even based on what Ruthie had said, was I killed back then? Was I hanged, or was it something, or did my soul or my spirit escape a certain death, or did I help other people, escape that death? Or it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, she was cool. I mean, she covered some other things too, but basically those are the big takeaways. But yeah, I mean, her thing was, and she didn't know your background. She just knew that we were going to do the interview. But I mean, my takeaway was she knew that you weren't happy where you were. She knew that you lived here a long time ago, and then knew. So those were three big things I thought were great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what was it like, in terms of your expectation? Because you come and you show up for one day, we walk around, you're a good guy, you're actually even carrying equipment with me as we're trekking around Salem. And then you're, a year and a half go away, and then you finally see what the film is like. What was and you actually even filmed kind of a section that we use at the end too. What was your anticipation, being on that? Because look, it was very low budget. It's like, a sound person, one camera guy, me, right? That's it, and you. Mm-hmm. And so it's a leap of faith for you to do this. What was it like being involved that day and then seeing it with all the stuff you've been in since then, America, with the scene with Tom Cruise, The Walking Dead, all that stuff. What was it like a couple of years later to see it? And did it rekindle any feelings, or what did you think about it?
Yeah, that's see that the low budget stuff is the kind of the run and gun guerrilla filmmaking. That's my favorite still by a long shot. I always tell people it's refreshing when you get to work with people who like and enjoy what they're doing. It's kind of for the love of the game, because especially on some of these bigger productions, it's I'm sure people got into the business because you want to be part of the industry and make movies and make cool stuff. But along the way, like, you just kind of see people who've been beaten down by the industry who are kind of just there for the paycheck after a while, which I totally get it. I'm not mocking that at all. But it just, you kind of feel it after a while of people just kind of lose that love of the game. So it becomes, you feel the business aspect more than the show part. And the show is the fun stuff. Honestly, doing this, I was really excited because documentaries are my favorite thing to watch. There's an argument with horror, I suppose.
Yeah, me
horror
too.
films.
Same thing. Those two. Yeah.
Those two. So being a part of a documentary in Salem, my favorite place in the world, and I get to be in it, it's the ingredients of a hit in my mind. No, I loved it, and I loved walking around Salem, with you guys. It was such a blast, and then the anticipation of watching it. I didn't know what to expect, because I think even you've described it as you kind of have a general story you want to cover, or general things, but you don't know like what the full story going into it is. So it's like, I don't know what the film's going to be about. And also I remember, like, when we tried to film certain segments there, and I was like, I couldn't even put 3 words together at a certain point at the end of the day. I'm like, what do we do? What am I saying? Like, what's happening?
I know.
Yeah. And that's why that little part at the end, where I'm back in LA and I kind of sum up my experience for the day, that's what we were trying to do in Salem on that day, but it just wasn't working. I don't know what happened. Actor brain fried or something.
But it's better. It's better to have you kind of 3,000 miles away or whatever and reflecting. So it worked out good, I thought. Yeah,
it worked out nice. And I just didn't know, like, after that long of a time period, it's like, how am I going to come across? Even when I do watch it, I'm a little like, well, it doesn't feel like, I feel like I lost some of my personality, but that's neither here nor there, because it has nothing to do with me, that film. I'm just part of it.
It gave me a chance to be a lazy director, because you just experienced it the way you want. You basically just had carte blanche to talk to each of those people in those 3 segments. There was no direction saying, hey, Kyle asked this or what. You just basically, with your own curiosity, fueled each segment to get what you wanted out of all 3 of those segments. So That was kind of interesting to sit back and let you just kind of carry the interaction, which I thought you did good. It's hard when you're just like in a situation like this and you're trying to know what you want to ask and what you want to get out of it. But to me, that was good. That was basically you just going, that's all you in those section in terms of that interaction. There was nothing kind of staged or anything. That's you finding out in your journey what you wanted to find out.
Yeah, it was, but I was really pleased with the film. And every time I watch anything paranormal related, like, I get excited. It's something that I've, for a long time, even before I went to Salem, like, I was always into ghosts and ghost stories, but it was nothing I ever really thought about much. And then over the years, I guess it's been a couple decades now at this point, where the interest just continues to grow. So whenever I watch or read a book, it feels like I'm fighting against getting more involved in it in a way.
Yeah.
I think you've had a similar experience in that way, like, because you feel like you've done so much, or I don't like to say you, but I feel like I've done so much outside of that, and especially like in terms of being an actor and how much I've put into my career as an actor. It's like part of me just wants to be like, I want to focus on something new now. I want to follow this growing interest in the paranormal. And I feel if I do that, then some of the acting stuff, I feel in a way to walk away from it feels a little weird. I know I could balance them, but there's just like this urge that's always inside of me, and it always happens. And it's like the impulse grows bigger when I watch a film or read a book about it. It's just like, what am I doing? I just need to go investigating. I need to show other people these experiences and listen to other people's experiences. And that's always happening.
Well, it definitely comes out. We've had a lot of conversations, emails and phone calls since the film came out. I did this podcast series just basically because I wanted to keep it going. I made the film. It's kind of expensive and time consuming to do a documentary, but I wanted to keep it going. And so I did a podcast and I just started interviewing more interesting people. And you had reached out part of why I wanted to get you on the show was because you were part of the documentary, such a big part of it, and was such an interesting kind of segment of it, but also because going forward, I mean, we mentioned Ruthie Larkin, but you kind of talked about having you do some segments too. So why don't we just talk a little bit about that, kind of what your interest is in terms of going forward and doing some segments and kind of some of the people that you would like to interview.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that you're doing this and that you're continuing the film with a web series. I think it's awesome, and I don't know what your goal for it is, but I see eventually moving into maybe some video, maybe throwing some like investigations into the mix when you get like on YouTube type of stuff, and just growing the podcast and also some of the videos. But yeah, I definitely want to participate as much as you will allow me, and talk to some guests. And there's some people over the course of my years that I would like to chat with. And one person in particular, my ex's sister, she grew up sensitive. She explained it to me that growing up, she had always seen ghosts and was able to communicate with them, but she said she couldn't control it. She didn't know how to turn it off, if you will. When she was 25 or so, she actually went to school in, I think it was London or somewhere in Europe anyway, where she was able to, I forget the school and I wish I could remember, where she was able to like enhance her abilities and learn to control them. Kind of like sounds like a X-Men school type of thing. And so she went to the school, and then she returned back to New York where she lives, and she opened a business as a psychic. And she started, getting clients in New York and communicating between, being the liaison, if you will, between the alive and who they wanted to speak with on the other side. And after a while, she said she just had to stop. She closed the business because she wasn't having fun doing it, because she said a lot of the people she was meeting in New York would come for information, and then they would end up leaving the sessions and just being, again, these are my words, bitter in a way that they didn't get more out of the experience. And some of them that came for help just didn't have a experience where they left the session and then didn't really do anything afterward with what the advice that they were given. So they just became very bitter. Yeah. So it really weighed down on Therese.
I was going to say, like, New York is a hotbed. I mean, as an empath, it's like a hotbed of like negative and positive and crazy energy. That's like throwing yourself into the fire pit right there. I mean, she probably almost would have been better even in Salem or someplace like that. Did she ever,
Well, yeah.
Was she in the city, do you know, or was she just in the state?
I mean, she grew up in the Bronx. So, wow. That was her home. And she's actually, she's Filipina, which they have, that culture has a much different understanding and view of the paranormal and spiritual life. Like, it's a very regular part, from my understanding, of their lives. It's not like a question. It's just part of their life. So she, like I said, it was just accepted that she was able to experience this. Nobody in her family really questioned it. And they have other stories about different, I forget the name of them, but there's these little dwarves, if you will, that live like just on the edge of the grass. And if you ever step off a sidewalk, for example, into like a little forested area, they apologize to say, I'm sorry if I can't see you. I'm sorry if I'm stepping on you. I don't mean to cause you any harm. But it's just like an accepted thing. Like, nobody thinks somebody else is crazy for it. It's just part of their culture.
That's kind of refreshing, because I've talked to a couple of mediums that were adopted or were raised in Christian families. And it's like, how do I tell people that I'm seeing dead people and things like that? So that's good. Now, does she leverage it at all, or does she just ignore it at this point? Does she just went on to something else? And does she ever pull a pendant out or anything, or the Ouija board, or does she just try to set it aside?
I'm not sure. I haven't spoken with her about that topic in a couple of years anyway. I should ask her. But as far as I know, she kind of just shut it down. I don't think I'm assuming she still, has her abilities, probably still experiences some, but she probably controls it.
Yeah, I think you're going to have some great stories. So one, just because of your contacts. One of the people I had on before was a couple episodes ago was Laura Marini, who's a producer, and she did the Haunting of series, which was on the Travel Channel. I don't know, 5-6 years ago, which was like celebrities that go to their houses, and then they would share where they're like T-Pain or people like that. So yeah. I'm anxious to see if you can, any of your kind of actor friends, but also you ran an Airbnb and you get some interesting guests. So we're going to see if you have any stories out of that and some other things as well.
Oh yeah.
And we mentioned Ruthie Larkin. Would like you to interview her, but turn the tables. Who knows? Maybe she'll give you another reading. But that's one thing we're going to be setting up in the near future, which is great.
Yeah, I definitely looking forward to speaking with Ruthie again. And yeah, that the Airbnbers that I've had here, there's this one gentleman in particular, and I'm hoping he'll talk with me, because he had some of the most exciting experiences that I've ever heard directly myself, from not reading a book or watching a film, but just listening to his story. He basically experienced a angel and demon battle literally in front of him, to the point where he just had to turn over because he didn't know what was happening, and he was terrified, and he turned away from it. And the description of the event is like nothing I've ever heard. And, he said he was really scared to even talk about it. And he doesn't talk about it. It's just, he explained, as we all know, in his circles, it's just not something that you talk about, because he's afraid he's going to sound crazy in front of his friends. And he was nervous to tell me about it. And he said, he had goosebumps while he was telling me the story. And it was just an insane story, and I would love for him to share that again.
Yeah, those are some of the best stories, So yeah, it's cool. So yeah, I might as well let people know that going forward, you're going to go off and take your microphone, or you'll either go live, or you'll be kind of a guest host on occasion and sharing some of your content.
That'd be awesome.
So that'd be great.
Yeah,
look forward to it. Yeah. A couple more questions, if you don't mind. When you sat down to watch the documentary, what was your because you didn't see the other people that were in the film until you saw the film. What was your kind of it was kind of an eclectic bunch. What was your thought kind of watching, like, from Little Frog to Mike Markowitz with the EVPs, to Jeff Belanger, to, Bob Berman, the scientific angle and all that stuff? Was that kind of threw you for a loop, or what? What was it like seeing that, knowing that you were in the documentary with those guys?
It's funny. I actually thought, I wish I was cool as all of them. That's my first thought. I did. I really did. I was like, man, I feel like I'm just this dude that doesn't really do anything except walk around and ask people questions. And I felt like everybody else had such a. I don't want to downplay everything too much, but I feel like everybody had such a great contribution to the film, especially like some of the science. Like, I'm really into the science of things, because that's, I think, of all things, people just basically put their faith in science, and they point to science as like the end all be all of what they choose to believe is real and whatnot. Some of the guests started talking, with very intelligently and articulately subject. It made me very excited. I'm like, I started to pause it, write down some of the things they were saying, rewind it, write down some things, just because it's like stuff that I going forward want to be able to discuss in a more articulate way and more intelligent manner. Because, that's the stuff I just really love hearing people talk about it.
Yeah, that was the tough connecting that. That was, quantum mechanics, and that was the double slit experiment. Editing that was so hard, because I had to review the transcript 4, 5, 6 times and make sure if I cut out anything, I didn't misrepresent something, because it was a little over my head at times, So yeah, for me, that was a leap of faith, having kind of the science kind of angle within the spirituality and the paranormal, because in these paranormal shows, people sometimes just want a ghost hunt.
Sure.
They don't want anything else. And so we did things a little bit differently. What's your favorite? If you watch the Travel Channel, if you have time to watch TV, maybe now you do, I don't know. But is there kind of 1 or 2 favorite paranormal shows that you really like?
Yeah, there's, when Ghost Hunters with Taps first came out many years ago, I think I was in college when that came out. That was a life changer, because I'm sure there were shows before that I was just unaware of. But it was like at that point in my life when, like I said, it was after going to Salem more and just becoming more and more interested. And then Ghost Hunters comes out, and it's like, oh my God, these people are doing, what I excites me in my heart. So that's always been a favorite. And then multiple shows over the years have come and gone. Ghost Adventures was something I was kind of lukewarm about because, as you know, it's like I always felt like if it's on TV, there's always got to be some sort of entertainment angle. They need the audience. And as anybody would know that's into this stuff, it's like the majority of your experiences, if you're out on an investigation, like there's sometimes you can spend an overnight and nothing will happen, or you don't really experience anything. And yet in all these episodes of all these shows, it seems like something's happening every single episode. So I was always a little turned off in that way, where I was like, how much of this is really entertainment value? How much is created for that angle? But after a while, and Ghost Adventures has certainly become one that I really like. And I tried to actually go see. They had a panel at Comic-Con last year. I go to Comic-Con every year, and that was surprisingly. I got in line about an hour before the event, and it was already completely sold out. And I was like in this other line, and I was still like 300 people behind the reserve list. So I was like, there's no way I was going to get in. But so I was a little sad by that. But yeah, I mean, I love all the shows that are out there. I even love some of the shows that aren't specific to ghosts that are also into like some of the cryptozoology stuff, like Bigfoot and aliens. Like I love that stuff too.
Yeah, there's Expedition Bigfoot. I was trying to get Ronnie LeBlanc on, but we had technical troubles with him too.
Oh yeah.
So we're trying to reschedule. He's actually from Leominster, Massachusetts.
Oh, cool.
But I don't know if you saw Expedition Bigfoot. It was on last year. It started around December, but they're a crew that went out. There was like 3 or 4 of them, including a scientist. One person got sick, and so they called him in, and he got to finish out the series with them. So, yeah. It's funny. You talk about these TV shows. It's called The Dead Files.
Mm-hmm.
I like the show a lot, but man, it's like, it's not just one ghost that they deal with. It's like, it's on an Indian reservation, and then there's a murder that happened, and then there's like these little goblins. It's like 4 or 5 things thrown in, and they do pictures at the end. It's like, the ghosts now are like, they've really amped up the, how distressed people are on some of these shows, which is entertaining, but it's a bit, I mean, one ghost is enough.
Right.
It's crazy. So yeah,
that's like,
I was thinking that.
Yeah. My brother is like super into anything Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and like that's just his thing, but he's not really into anything else. It just seems like he's just into Bigfoot. And it's like his wife, she can't stand like that he believes in it and whatnot. And like, she always gives him such a hard time. And it's always funny to me, like again, going back to like the science thing, it's like, until there's quote scientific proof that Bigfoot's out there, obviously there's going to always be people that just will, I feel like the majority of people will just always deny its existence. But it's funny to me because it's like, there are such strange creatures in the world. Like one day I was looking this up, and it was like, a couple that come to mind was there's these creatures called sea cucumbers, which live on like the ocean floor. And they, whenever a predator comes near, they have the ability to poop out all of their internal organs, which are toxic, and they shoot their poop of these organs at the predator. And because they're toxic, it kills the predator. And they're able to do this because they grow all their organs again.
Wow.
So, but it's just an odd concept, right? And it sounds like it's so against anything that we would ever believe, or
a toxic, but there's just Avenger character or something, like one of those B horror movies, whatever.
And there's such strange creatures out there that do such weird things, and then that sound on paper too unreal to be real, and yet we're sitting and just like, we can't believe that there's a creature that's basically walks around like a human, that's just like a ape, and it's like that's hard to believe.
Yeah,
when we have such bizarre creatures in the world, so it's always an ironic, funny thing to me.
I mean, the ocean, 90% of the ocean isn't even knows what's going on.
No, that's what I was reading. Supposedly we have like the entire ocean or something has been mapped out. However, 95% of it is unseen by human eyes.
Yeah, it's just like the universe.
And it's like, and at the same time, anything under 3 miles long, we can't see. It's not big enough for us to see. And if you think about 3 miles is a huge amount of space. And you know how many bizarre things can be in 3 miles? Like it's such a strange thing.
Yeah. What I find interesting about you, Kyle, is that you have through psychics this past connection, but you're kind of like a lot of us and like you're seeking. I mean, there's some psychic pointers telling you that there is something there, but you haven't quite had that total concrete evidence yet. So in a way, you're a searcher like I think a lot of us are. You're probably ahead of us a little bit because you at least have some starting markers that have been put out for you. So what is your goal going forward in terms of the paranormal, and what do you hope to accomplish, and what would you like to do in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's it's interesting to even think about that. It's like one of those, what do you want to do with your life? Putting me on the spot with that.
Especially in the past 3 months, how things change so quickly, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting you picked up on like the part of me that was like a seeker, but without proof. I definitely find myself in this weird juxtaposition of I find myself being a believer without a doubt, but at the same time, I know I have to be skeptical because I know that there's a lot of danger in just blindly believing in everything without questioning everything. I think that's the most important part, is to question everything, because if you can't answer your questions, then that leads to the belief. So it's like I'm definitely looking for some experience that's just undeniably real to me, and I feel like I've seen other people's, and I trust other people's stories, and even some of these shows, for example, it's like I feel like I've seen enough to know that there are things going on. It's just I haven't had a personal experience. And then at the same time, I've had a few experiences, but I'm able to justify that. Something in the back of my head says, well, maybe that wasn't what I thought it was. I might always do that. And I don't know. Maybe I have experienced something, but I've already justified it as not being an experience. And so I don't know how long that game will play, unless like some spirit stands in front of me in full form. It's like maybe that's the only thing that'll really do it for me. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely do some explorations. I mean, I've went to like the Conjuring House, but during the day, not at night. And even I think some of the guests, like we'll probably meet on the show, will probably maybe lift a veil. Who knows? But hey, thank you for being on the show.
Sure.
And actually, I look forward to like seeing what you come up with for some future shows and what you come up with your perspective of Afraid of Nothing. So I appreciate your interest, and I look forward to seeing some of the stuff you kind of bring to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to dive in on some of this, and really appreciate that we met and we were able to do this project together, and that we're continuing the relationship. I'm excited that it happened.
Yeah, I think we're both seekers, and I think, hopefully we find something. So thanks again. And this is, look forward to working with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared. Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.